Hello, everybody. So, I am live at a very inappropriate time. If you are watching this live, go to bed. But this is going to be for the people in the morning when you wake up because I have thoughts and I wanted to share them with you. First of all, welcome to all the new subscribers. We are growing very fast on Instagram. One of my videos got a lot of views and it's reaching the people. So that's awesome. Thank you to everyone who subscribed. It means a lot. So the topic of today is great suspectations, six suspectations. And basically what I want to talk about is the challenges we as trans people experience or genderqueer people experience in a cis world and how we may not even be aware of the fact that this is a challenge and something that is very antithetical to how we as fluid people should live. Now, I'm gonna take notes. I feel like a teacher, but if I don't do this, I'm literally not going to be able to focus on what I'm trying to say. So, the first thing I have found in my experience is that cis society teaches us what is proper and improper. And when I think about cis, I also think about the fact that cis not only encompasses like cis society not only encompasses like trying not to be trans, it also encompasses like being white and being skinny and being a man and being masculine and being working a 9 to 5 and like not trusting our intuition and like running ourselves into the ground instead of being patient with our bodies. And so that's like basically a preface, but basically it teaches us what is proper and improper. And so if you go out in a formal setting and there's an expectation that you're supposed to dress formally in a suit and tie or in like a skirt, and then if you don't do that, then you're not going to be considered welcome in that space. But if you are trans, what the hell are you supposed to do if there's an expectation to dress like a certain way and that doesn't work for you, right? That is very inflammatory to the trans um, experience or to the trans body, but it's also inflammatory to like um, anybody who's not a cishet white male. Okay. Like in terms, if you're like a person of color and you have 4C hair, that's not appropriate in a formal setting, right? And then you have to make do and make sure that fits what is allowable. And so this encompasses so many things. And when we are deconstructing internalized transphobia or just all these expectations of cisness, it goes so deep. Not only does it touch like, oh, I'm not allowed to dress the opposite gender or just be whoever I want to be. Like, you're literally not allowed to be so many things. So, proper and improper. And another thing is that it encourages surface level connections. And this is so big. This is so big because oftentimes we make assumptions about people based on what they look like and what we think about them, right? And a lot of that is based on safety, right? If I am a man or if I look like a boy, let's say, and I am interacting with a girl, she is immediately going to not meet my gaze, not really interact with me because as a protective system, she just wouldn't do that. And when I go out into the world as a girl, I don't really look guys in the face either. And I don't really interact with them. I don't want to approach them because it's just a matter of safety and it's just a matter of like protecting my nervous system as I go from like A to Z, right? And because we're all stuck on our phones going from A to Z, We don't meander to get from B to C to D, meet a person here, meet a person there. And so we're left with all these surface level connections where we make assumptions about people based on what they look like, and we're not able to move past that or even engage in a conversation because there's all these walls. Now, that's not always the worst thing because you can approach people and ask questions, but we have to do a lot of internal work to see it as an option that you can literally just approach anybody and not make assumptions about who they are based on what they look like. Um, and oh, this also leads us to assuming that everybody is cis. So if you see somebody who's like AMAB and they present femininely, or you see someone who's AFAB and they present masculinely, you just may assume that they're gay instead of assuming that they're genderqueer. And even trans people do this, where we will look at a person and just, not even think that, like, the purpose of society being so cis is that even trans people, even genderqueer people, immediately make the assumption that everyone around them is also um, cis, and then we're not able to feel safe in that environment. Like, if you've observed in your life, if someone has like a laptop sticker of a trans flag or of a bisexual flag or a lesbian flag, it's like a weight off your shoulders in a way because that person has made it safe for you to be yourself in that space, even if it's just a little symbol, because everybody else in that space is going to see that laptop sticker that has that trans flag or that lesbian flag and know that people like that exist. So cis society wants us to not exist because then everyone can continue assuming that we don't exist. And then that makes it so much more difficult for us to feel safe and not have our nervous systems be constantly inflamed when we're just trying to go outside and live our lives. And, it's so funny. I was at a bubble tea shop getting my boba. I love boba. I was getting lychee boba. And this lady called me sir. And it was like how can you just assume about me that I'm a sir? I'm not a comrade. Like that's not your first assumption. I'm not a peer. I'm not a comrade. I'm not a friend. I am sir. I have not even been knighted, first of all. Second of all, like, yes, he is fine. You can refer to me as he. I don't care. I'm gender fluid like that. But sir is a stretch. Like, and what does it even mean? Back to proper and improper, formal and informal. And y'all neurodivergent, autistic people understand this the best because what the F? There are so many of these like expectations that are different across cultures that we have to be aware of. And like even cis expectations are not constant across culture, which basically goes to show that this is so made up. It's so cerebral and it's not embodied. Because if everybody was in our bodies, we would realize that we are truly such fluid beings. And I've recently had a lot of conversations with people who thought they were cis because they didn't realize that there's so much fluidity within gender. Um, and they now identify as trans. Maybe not full time, but like that label speaks to them because trans is universal. This experience of becoming and unbecoming and transitioning, aren't we always in transition as human beings? Aren't we always in transition? I have never reached a point in my life where I have finally felt complete and done and finished. Maybe I have felt it for an hour or 2 hours. Maybe I felt it for a minute. Maybe I felt it for a day or 2. But there is always a higher ceiling to climb. Like there's always like more to discover. There's more, always more to unfold into. And cisness does not allow for that. But if you really think about it, don't we all transition? Don't cis people transition from girl to woman, from boy to man? To me, those are completely different genders with a completely different set of expectations of behavior. And um, to branch off of that, granola girl is clearly a different gender than alt emo baddie, right? Different genders. Military guy is clearly different from fishing guy, which is clearly different from um, rock climbing guy, which is clearly different from finance bro. And you know what? There is overlap in that too. So, and lastly, well, maybe not lastly, there's simply no nuance to human to being a human. It doesn't allow for that nuance. Like cisness is not just about like I said at the beginning of this live, it's not just about our ability to look like the gender we are assigned at birth and or be the gender we're assigned at birth or look like um the gender we identify as. It's so much about like rigidity and rules and like controlling the public. So yeah, yeah. Being trans is really beautiful and it's magical. And it is a big deal to express your gender queerness because it reminds you and so many others that fluidity is a part of the human experience and not something that we just experience on the off chance that we feel something. And yeah, those are my thoughts. Um, I'm not sure if I have any more, but lately, so I recently wrote a newsletter, and it was one of the most vulnerable newsletters I've ever written. It was about like my transition, and if you guys are new to my channel, I transitioned for the first time at 12 years old um, to be a guy, and then now I'm kind of transitioning to be a gender fluid girl lesbian. That's kind of what I'm landing on. And I definitely have so much more nuance about transition in general, and I'm going to talk about this in other videos because this is so important. But I think it's so important to mention that when I first transitioned, um, I wanted so badly to pass because passing to me meant proof of who I was and finally that I would feel free. But now I have an understanding that you don't have to prove yourself at all as the gender you are based on how you present yourself. It may be a preference for you to look like the gender or look cis and look like the gender that you want to, that you identify as. It might be a preference. You might select it as an option, but proof, you don't need that to be trans, especially because so many trans people like having a beard, but also like using she or her pronouns. So many trans people like to have big breasts. Oh, I don't know if I should say that. Big whatever, and just like use he him pronouns, and that's what's comfortable for them, and they like the fact that they don't need to change their bodies, that they can be whatever they want to be. And so I always like to remind people that when you're transitioning, please remember that your transition in terms of chemical or medical transition is not the point. The point is that you live more fully as yourself, and transition can assist you in that. Medical and social transition can assist you in that, but it's not the point, right? And so when you make the point to look cis And to be cis and to present as cis or cis passing, you lose connection to your personhood because you don't honor the most important part about you, which is that you are trans. And that is actually really cool. So when I was a stealth trans guy for all those years, I was basically just hiding myself from the whole world. And I didn't tell any of my friends I was trans. I didn't tell my best friends I was trans. I lived this total cis mask. And looking back at pictures, like I wasn't happy with myself. I looked 100% like this skater, white cis dude who maybe looked a bit queer, but I looked exactly like my transition goal. And still, like, there was no lightness in me. Like, I didn't necessarily, people thought I was cute, but people didn't like get a taste of my personality because I was trying so hard to uphold cisness because I made the point of my transition to be and look cis instead of to just be more of myself. So that's the key point here. You're transitioning to be more of yourself, and the byproduct of that is that you just might select it as an option to also medically transition, socially transition, look like and present like the gender you want to be more of. And it can be fun and exciting, and it doesn't have to be stressful, and you don't have to pain yourself over the fact that you don't look a certain way because cis society is not all that there is. There is a whole trans world that will accept you without question and without needing you for you to prove it. And for those of us who have been in trans spaces, who have been in trans communities, I know you know what I'm talking about. You step in and it's like you don't have to put on a front. You don't have to pretend and you don't have to prove and you don't have to set all these unrealistic expectations of yourself to be proper and follow all these rules and be rigid. You can just be yourself, and it's enough that you just want to use a certain pronoun. You don't have to prove it to us. So, yeah, this is my little spiel on cisness and cis expectations and how difficult it is to sometimes navigate this because all of these things that I've just mentioned really go unnoticed because it's so ingrained in our society. It's the proper way to live life. It's the safe way to live life, and it prevents us from connecting with each other and helping each other out. It prevents a communist lifestyle. Um, and really, deep down, people just want to help each other. People just want to help each other. I really do believe that. And I believe that about every single one of you watching. I believe deep down you want to help each other and be helped and be seen and be loved. And the more that you are able to not reject your transness, but instead, I mean, you can start with a neutral approach, but my approach to loving myself as a trans person, especially in recent months, has or year has always been celebrating the fact that I'm trans because the fact that I'm trans makes me so unique. I don't want to look like or be like anybody else. And I can't be like anybody else. And no one else can be like me and do it like me. And no one else can do it like you. You represent something so unique. And because you are trans, you're basically like creating yourself from scratch. And that should be exciting instead of scary. So yeah, yeah. I love you guys so much. I think I'm gonna hop off the call because the call like we're on FaceTime because I am a rambler and I will ramble until the cows come home. I will actually start rambling after the cows come home because it's not an appropriate time to be up. I am in Eastern Standard Time, so it's like past 1 p.m. But yeah, I will link the link to the newsletter that I wrote yesterday, and you can join my newsletter through that link. I am a lot more vulnerable, share a lot more stuff on there, keep you posted on the community calls. Oh, yes, we have a community call this Saturday on January 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it'll all be in the Patreon in the Diva tier. We are continuing on, like in January, our theme per January is deconstructing cis beauty standards. And then in February, we're going to lead into cis value standards because beauty and value are so linked together in our society. But I want to start with beauty because I really want to tap in with that inner child who just wants to feel pretty and beautiful and loved for that. And we will be feeling into where in your body you deny yourself pleasure simply because you're not beautiful enough or simply because you're not the epitome of pleasantness or cisness, you know, because we associate cisness with cohesion and pleasantness and aestheticism and beauty. But we just haven't seen enough trans representation that shows us that all of these features, like a woman with a bit of like facial hair, like a woman with strong features, a woman who is tall and like takes up a lot of space is heavenly and beautiful. And a man who is like of a shorter stature but emanates like security and like that masculine support and or playfulness, you know, like it's all like we don't even need to have all these rigid ideas about ourselves. And girls can be tall, boys can be short, and we don't need to even in relationships with each other or with other people, cis people, we don't even need to uphold all of these cis expectations of like boys need to be tall, they need to take the girl out on a date. Da, 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 da. Like we will drive ourselves to insanity trying to uphold that, and it's not relevant to us. Seriously, like it's all of these cis expectations, they're not relevant to a trans person's life. I think that they are relevant in terms of how we navigate life, but in terms of like your imagination, the term in terms of like where your brain is as you live your life, there's no need. There's no need to uphold all this. You can let your guard down and really be yourself. And that, my friends, is how you will finally feel like life is worth living. And you can take a deep breath and just be okay. Okay, so if you don't have an in-person community of trans people or an online community, I started a community of over 70 members on Patreon. If you want to join us, please join us. You're more than welcome. We unpack all of these heavy emotions because I don't want you to have to do all this by yourself. We were never meant to unpack trauma by ourselves because we weren't wounded in isolation. We were wounded in community, in cis communities that didn't see us for our beauty as trans people. And I think a lot of us are now coming into the realization that this is a farce and we can create a new life for ourselves with a new imagination and a new world that doesn't need to be so rigid in its conception. It can be fluid in its conception. Okay. Love you guys so bad. Thank you for all the new subscribers and all the follows on Instagram. Really appreciate you guys. And you're the best. And take care. Sleep well. Bye.